We're going to take a look at the three different types of ion channels in neurons, and these are really important, and we're going to keep coming back to these throughout the chapter. The first type of ion channel we have are leak channels. So these are always open and they have no gates on them. They are located throughout the whole neuron, so you will find them everywhere throughout the neuron. And the leak channels that are important for generating the resting membrane potential of the neuron are the sodium leak channels and the potassium leak channels. The next type of ion channel we have are the ligand-gated ion channels. So these have gates on them that are going to be open and closed when a ligand binds to this type of ion channel. And a ligand typically will be a neurotransmitter. The ligand-gated ion channels are going to be located on the dendrites and the soma of the neuron. And they're important because they generate the graded potentials. And the last type of ion channel that we find on neurons are voltage-gated ion channels. And these are going to be opening and closing their gates in response to a change in the membrane potential. Usually when the membrane potential becomes more positive, that's going to trigger the gate to open. So we have a couple of different types of voltage-gated channels. Voltage-gated sodium and voltage-gated potassium channels are located in the axon hillock and down the axon, and they're going to generate the action potentials. And then the voltage-gated calcium channels are located in the axon terminal, and they're responsible for releasing the neurotransmitter. Here are the leak channels. They're open all the time. They don't have any gates on them, and they are located throughout the neuron. The ones that are important are the sodium leak channels and the potassium leak channels. And they're going to be responsible for creating the resting membrane potential of the neuron, which is the -70 millivolts. The ligand-gated ion channels are located in the dendrites and the cell body or the soma of the neuron. And these are going to be bound by ligands such as neurotransmitters, and that's what's going to be opening the gate. So in this example here, we have the neurotransmitter acetylcholine binding to this ligand-gated ion channel, which opens the gate. And we're going to be letting mostly sodium into the cell, and that will create a graded potential, which will eventually trigger an action potential, which we'll talk about later. We have three different types of voltage-gated ion channels. The voltage-gated sodium channels and voltage-gated potassium channels, they have the greatest density in the axon hillock, followed by the axon. And they're responsible for generating the action potentials or nerve signals. And then the voltage-gated calcium channels are located in the axon terminals, and they release the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. This is a voltage-gated sodium channel. These are located in the axon hillock and down the axon, and they will open their gate, which this gate is in blue here. That gate will open when the inside of the cell becomes less negative or more positive. And when the gate opens, sodium will come to the inside of the neuron, and that will help generate the action potential or nerve signal. And then in the axon terminal, we have our voltage-gated calcium channels. And what will open the gate there is when the membrane potential becomes more positive, and the gate will open, calcium will flow into the axon terminal, and that will trigger the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. And those are the voltage-gated calcium channels located just on the axon terminal. So let's just review all the types of ion channels that we find on a neuron by making this drawing here. So we have the leak channels, which remember are always open all the time. And the ones that are really important for our neurons are going to be the sodium leak channels, and And we've also got the potassium leak channels. And they're going to be responsible for helping to create the resting membrane potential of minus 70 millivolts. And they're going to be located all over the neuron. So they're going to be on the dendrites, the soma, the axon hillock, down the axon, axon terminal. They're everywhere. So they're going to be throughout the neuron. And then we have our ligand-gated ion channels. And these have a gate. And what's going to be opening or closing the gate would be when the ligand or the neurotransmitter binds to our gated ion channel, and that'll, for example, open the gate, and then we'll let the specific ion in or out. And these are going to be located on the soma or the body of the neuron, and also on the dendrites. And these are going to create graded potentials. And we're going to talk about these later. But the graded potentials, if they're big enough, can stimulate the start of an action potential at the axon hillock. And then we have our third type of ion channel, which are the voltage-gated ion channels. So we've got three different types. We've got a voltage-gated sodium channel, and then we have a voltage-gated potassium channel, and those are going to be located starting at the axon hillock, and then they will extend down the axon and then they'll end right here, right before the axon terminal. And they're going to be responsible for creating action potentials. So that's the nerve signal. And then at the axon terminal, we're going to have some different voltage-gated ion channels. And these are voltage-gated calcium channels. So these will be found just on the axon terminals, and they're going to let calcium into the axon terminal, and that'll trigger the release of the neurotransmitter by exocytosis. So we've got some neurotransmitter stored in some vesicles here, and when the calcium comes into the axon terminal, that'll trigger the exocytosis of the neurotransmitter into this synaptic cleft here. Okay, so that's where the voltage-gated calcium channels are. So make sure you know the three types of ion channels that we find in the neurons, where they're located, and then what each type of ion channel is doing, so what they're responsible for doing.